pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I have Johanna Pfister or her assistant give that report to us. I will open the public hearing on that particular topic right now, and please lead with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kathleen Litchfield. I'm the 911 Communications Manager here at Town of Hilton Head Island Fire Rescue, and I am here to ask you all to approve a new street name. That street name is going to be Redfish Point. This is on behalf of Matt Amlung of 325 Squire Pope Road. This is to name the access easement that will be offering direct access to 2 homes that are going to be built on that parcel. In the future, there may be further development on some of the surrounding parcels, such as 321 and 323 Squire Pope Road. The zoning in this area is water-oriented mixed use, which could allow for up to 16 dwelling units per acre. So we need to plan for possible future development in this area. And we recommend that you approve the application based on the criteria in the packet. This was chosen, the name was chosen because the redfish is a species native to South Carolina coastal waters, and it also reflected the applicant's enjoyment of fishing, which he mentioned in his narrative. This highlighted part of the parcel here, 325. This is the affected parcel, and some of the other parcels that we are concerned about future development is going to be this 323, that's about an acre right there, and 321, that's about 4/10 of an acre. And this access easement will be running right along this line here, as you can see from this aerial photo, if that makes sense. This is the site plan. There's going to be 2 dwelling units plus a garage right now that are going to be located on that parcel. Once again, this parcel could be up to 16 dwelling units per acre, and this particular parcel is about an acre. So as described in the staff report, the stream names have been vetted and met the criteria set out in the land management ordinance. Do any of you have any questions for me right now?
Any questions on the staff renaming proposal? Commissioner Hens.
So when you name, if it's approved and you rename this Redfish Point, is that when it goes from an access easement to a street?
So this is going to be an access easement. We are naming the access easement.
Correct. We, Johanna Pfister, Deputy Chief. It is an access easement. And so like at some point it may become something else if the development makes it become something else. But right now it's an access easement, and it does not make sense for it to have a Squire Pope address. We don't have any additional Squire Pope addresses. It is so far off of Squire Pope that finding it and knowing that there's 2 more houses back there does not make sense for a fire rescue response. And like I said, we don't have addresses in that area to continue to give more to it. And should they want to put any additional homes on 323, there are no more addresses either.
So we name streets as well as access easements?
Correct.
Just so that we can find them?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, do we have a motion? I'll make a motion that we naming as. Okay, motion made by Commissioner Lobaugh, seconded by Commissioner Dubois. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand. It's unanimous, and we move to the next item. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item would be a public hearing to consider an ordinance to amend Title 16 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Hilton Head Island, the Land Management Ordinance, to amend the current regulations for tree protection to include the sections you see listed on your agenda. And we will have a report from Missy Lewick, the Director of Planning. I will open the public hearing on that particular topic at this point. And Missy, welcome.
Thank you. Missy Lewick, Director of Planning. Happy to be before the Planning Commission today. We have 3 text amendments to the Land Management Ordinance to discuss. And the first one, as the chair mentioned, is a proposal that is for our tree regulations. As you are well aware, the amendment process that we're under is a priority within the town's strategic action plan, within the growth management strategy, and the amendment project is broken into 2 parts, both the full code overhaul and the priority amendments. The priority amendments are pressing community development issues that are, we have identified the best short-term solution to those to address prior to the full code overhaul. As you are also aware, we had a workshop with Town Council last fall to discuss all of these priority amendments prior to them being finalized. And for the tree protection provisions, we discussed the following, that we would increase requirements for live oak and laurel oaks for tree preservation by reducing the size at which they're protected. We would update the mitigation requirements by increasing the plant back size requirements. We would update the list of native plants and remove the exception of specimen trees on single-family lots, which would result in reduction of unnecessary removal of specimen trees. So largely, based on that direction from council, the amendments before you are doing just that. These regulations will strengthen our tree protection during development and ensure that new projects align with our community's environmental values. Again, it does strengthen those tree protections for both specimen and significant trees and promotes the use of native vegetation. Additionally, that tree protections for single-family lots is extended to the entire community. There have been for many years tree protection standards within the planned unit developments for single-family, but not outside of the planned development communities. The key updates, again, are outlined here in detail, and then also later in the staff report in a detailed table. The live oak and laurel oak trees, so that threshold for preservation of those trees is reduced. It's reduced for 5 inches for live oak and laurel oak specimen trees. In addition, significant live oak and laurel oak trees are also reduced. So for single trunk live oaks and laurel oaks, it's reduced by 4 inches, and it's reduced by 7 inches for multi-trunk live oak significant trees. Additionally, the mitigation provisions require larger replacement trees so that plant back are larger plantings. And there's 4 categories of plant back, and the minimum installation for these categories, it's 2 inches for categories 1 and 2, and then 1 inch for categories 3 and 4. That's a slight variation from what we heard from council. So it's 1 inch instead of 2 inches for those cone-bearing evergreens, palms, and ornamentals. We expanded the native plant list, and that list of approved native plants is updated to reflect current ecological priorities and biodiversity. And again, we talked about that specimen tree protections are extended to include all single-family lots, which should reduce unnecessary removal of significant trees. The table is redundant of what I just talked about, but you can see in the table that reduction in size at which both specimen and significant trees, just for the live oaks and laurel oaks, it's not the full list of protected tree classes. So it prioritized those oak trees and reduces the size at which they're protected, both for the specimen category and the significant category. Again, you can see that the size changes here for the plant back for the mitigation requirements of those 4 categories. And then you can see where that single family exemption component is proposed to be struck within the code. With all amendments, we look at nonconformities as well as the text amendment review standards. In this case, this amendment would not create any new nonconformities. Again, text amendments are required to meet certain standards as provided by in the land management ordinance. Items A through F are those criteria. And in the staff report, it identifies how this proposed amendment meets the required criteria. The text amendment as proposed supports the comprehensive plan goals concerning natural resource preservation and tree protection. It's required due to continuing concerns with tree cutting and the loss of specimen and significant trees. It addresses a demonstrated and vocalized community need to strengthen tree protection, promote ecological health, and maintain the aesthetic and environmental character of the area. It's consistent with the intent of the ordinance and the town's efforts to preserve tree cover and habitat. It results in a more attractive and sustainable development, ensuring logical and orderly development patterns. And it minimizes the impact of development on the natural environment by protecting trees and strengthening mitigation for the removal of trees. That concludes my presentation. This is a public hearing before you today, and the Planning Commission is a recommending body to council. Are there any questions?
Any commissioner questions of Missy before I open up public comment? Commissioner Lobo, don't forget to activate your mic.
Hi, Missy. I have a question about kind of implementation of this, especially as it relates to the single family residence. So I'm going to give kind of two examples, and it'll be obvious, I think, what I'm asking. So first example is a homeowner in a community that has a POA and an ARB, and they have one of these oak trees, and they decide it's healthy, but they want to remove it because they think it's too big or too messy or whatever. The second is the exact same, only the tree has been deemed to be not good by a arborist or a tree company, and they think it needs to come down. In both cases, based on this, how does the homeowner and or the ARB determine whether the tree can be cut down?
Right now, and I can, it requires an arborist report. And if Trey or Michelle or Shay could point to the section where it says that, I will pull it up on the screen in order for that tree to be removed.
And so is it as long as there is an arborist, a tree company report that says that it is deemed necessary to remove it because of the health of the tree, and it's
correct.
okay for the resident or the ARB to proceed and approve that?
That's correct.
In the community?
And the avenue, if they don't have that, is to seek a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay. That answers it. I don't think you need to dig further. I think
Okay.
I understand.
Commissioner Whaley?
Hi, Missy, thank you. So do these new standards sync up with the PUDs right now, or is there any disconnect at all?
No, it brings, so the plan development areas have, because of the single family exemption, have been regulated more strictly than the areas that are outside. And so all of them have preservation standards in place, and they do require arborist reports right now for removal of specimen trees and significant trees, yes.
And one follow-up question. If a homeowner or a landowner decides a tree is hazardous and removes it without that arborist report, what is the town's response to something like that? And thank you.
So we investigate first, and then if it is a violation, the current code has provisions for how that is handled, both in if there is a citation issued, but there is mitigation required.
Other questions of the commission to Missy? Okay, Hannah, did we have anybody sign up to speak on this particular topic today?
Not this topic, no.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak with us on this particular topic? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for discussion by the commissioners. What's your pleasure, commissioners? Do we, Commissioner Hens,
Move to approve as presented.
Vice Chair Campbell, seconds. Any discussion? We've been moved and seconded to approve as presented. All in favor, please raise your right hand. We have a unanimous decision there. So we will be making that recommendation to town council. Next, we move on to the next priority amendment, which has to do with sign standards. And so we will open the public hearing on that particular topic and ask Missy to continue.
Well, thank you. So the next text amendment that is before you is an amendment to our sign standards. And staff is recommending approval of this proposed amendment. Again, this is all part of the priority amendments process that is part of the town strategic action plan. The town council workshops direction on signs was that our current sign standards and sign regulations are not content neutral as required by a Reed versus Town of Gilbert Supreme Court decision, and to amend our sign code to be compliant with that Supreme Court decision. So to summarize, what that means is that this amendment proposes updates to the sign regulations to ensure compliance with that federal case law by adopting a content neutral sign code. And of course, this is in response to that 2015 decision. And there are quite a bit of changes that are proposed here. And I think there will be a lot more changes to the sign code in the full code overhaul. And we aimed the extent of the proposed amendment to just bring it into compliance with this particular Supreme Court case. The regulations based on content of signs has to be avoided, as content rules are subject to scrutiny requiring a compelling governmental interest and narrowly tailored measures. And so what these updates align with those legal standards and create fairer, more defensible sign regulations that preserve to the maximum extent possible current town regulations regarding size, height, location, design, and permitting of signs. The amendments also have some minor clarifications and housekeeping changes to streamline the process to make sign regulations easier to navigate. And again, like I mentioned, there will be further adjustments to sign regulations in the full code. So I described again that this amendment streamlines and clarifies our sign regulations, and they're organized in both the issue that we are addressing and then how the proposed amendment fits in with that. I wanted to point out that based on the length of the amendment in the sign code, the table that is in the staff report are only the most noteworthy sections of the particular amendment, but you can look to the actual text amendment for all of the changes that are proposed to the sign text. There's a section that deals with substitution of non-commercial messages. It's proposed that the prior language is struck and replaced with new language. The purpose of a substitution clause is to ensure that if sign code allows sign containing commercial copy, it shall also allow non-commercial sign to the same extent. And it should apply to every possible dimension of the sign, including location, duration, posting, size or area, materials, design requirements, or requirement for a permit, etc. So the new language, I will not read verbatim, but you can see that within the staff report. There are some changes to flags, excuse me, flags and interior site signs and temporary yard signs are the majority or bulk of the changes. There's a full strike to how the prior language regulated flags. And then there are two main buckets of how flags are regulated in the proposed text amendment. So subsection A refers to flags on town-owned, leased, managed, or operated property, or flags on public property. And that is that we may display the United States flag, South Carolina flag, or a town flag on any and all town-owned, leased, managed, or operated property. And that other displays of flags on property that is owned, leased, or managed, or operated by the town are not permitted. And then all other flags shall comply with the following. No more than 2 flags are allowed per parcel. Flags shall not be placed within a street easement or right-of-way. Flags cannot be placed on public property unless posted by the public entity owning the parcel. Size of a flag shall not exceed 24 square feet. There are some provisions of how that size could be waived, as stated. And then these terms are to be applied to flags generally and shall not be interpreted to supersede or conflict with any applicable state or federal laws or regulations related to the U.S. flag or South Carolina flag. And again, this is because you can't read a flag. The former language here referred to non-governmental flags. We can't read a flag to determine if it's a non-governmental flag or any other flag. Interior site signs, the current ordinance includes several sign types that are found internal to sites and parking lots, like menu boards, parking signs, shopping cart, return signs, and those signs are now grouped together as all interior site signs. They're proposed to be exempt from permitting and subject to several requirements, and there also is a refined definition in the definitions section. So it identifies here that these signs are internally oriented on commercial and multifamily property. They don't require permits. And then there's criteria that are identified here. And then here's the new definition for an interior sign. It's a permanent internally oriented sign on a non-residential parcel that is not readily visible and legible beyond the boundaries of the parcel on which it's located and is intended for viewing from the interior of the subject parcel. Temporary yard signs, there are several changes here because temporary yard signs are both fall into the non-permitted category and the permitted category. So if you're looking at the full text amendment, you will see it located in two sections. So temporary yard signs that total 9 square feet or less during election seasons are proposed to be exempt from permitting based on legal review and case law. In no case can the town regulate what message is displayed on these signs during that specific time frame, even if it was not related to that election or referendum. So the regulations then here for that particular time frame allow up to 9 square feet of temporary yard signs within that election window. 90 days are allowed without permits, and they still have to comply to these requirements. So the number of signs is not limited on the parcel. Of course, it can't exceed 9 square feet. And during that time frame, the material of the sign is relaxed. The signs can be made from lightweight materials, such as corrugated plastic, cardboard, wood, or similar materials, and can be affixed to the ground with metal wire frames, wood stakes, or plastic stakes. They cannot be located in an easement or a right-of-way, and cannot be posted on public property unless it was posted by the public entity that owns the parcel. And there also are some standards for temporary signs, and these are for permitted temporary signs. And so it standardizes all temporary signs that are currently regulated by their content. So temporary signs in the existing sign code include things like real estate signs, construction signs, and the list goes on and on. Many of those are now grouped into a category called temporary yard signs, because again, you can't read the sign to know how to regulate the sign. So there are general requirements for the durability of the sign, illumination standard, shape, number, size, and time frame. Temporary signs are not exempt from permitting, so they do require a sign permit. One temporary yard sign is permitted per parcel. There are some other circumstances where additional temporary yard signs are permitted, and those are listed here in the summary area during permitted construction projects, when the building or property is listed for sale, and there's additional criteria in that time frame before and after an election or referendum. And it further specifies that within that time frame, 90 days before or 7 days after an election or referendum, a permit is only required if the total size of signs exceeds 9 square feet. Again, we talked about in that non-permitted signs, if it was less than 9 square feet, no permits required. But if it exceeds 9 square feet, there are additional criteria. And that criteria is listed here. So again, this one exception here for that window in and around the election season, if a temporary sign exceeds 9 square feet, the total size of signs shall not exceed 9 square feet, and, let's see, subsection 2, the total size of all signs during this time frame shall not exceed 32 square feet. So permit for temporary signs within that window is needed for temporary signs over 9 square feet and cannot exceed 32 square feet. And then the number of temporary signs on a parcel is not limited. And then it has that same relief from the material requirements, and then and the same regulations for temporary yard signs in the unpermitted also appear here. It should be noted again that although those additional sign provisions may relate to the signs will be used for, but the town still cannot regulate what is on the additional signs during these circumstances or timeframes. The amendment also has changes to driveway access point signs, and those are similar to interior site signs. These are oriented toward traffic control at driveways or intersections, and driveway access point signs do require a permit. There's a maximum size requirement of 4 square feet, a maximum of 2 driveway access signs per access point, and the maximum height of a driveway access point sign is 3 feet. Interior site signs, again, they mentioned that they're similar to the driveway access point signs. They require permits as well. They have the same maximum size requirement and the same height requirement as well. So the approval of this amendment will not create nonconformities. There are several sign types that are grouped into interior site classifications, but the same dimensional requirements will apply. Additionally, temporary yard signs cannot benefit from nonconforming rights. As again, with all text amendments, there are requirements for the review standards that are considered when the Planning Commission and Town Council are reviewing amendments to the land management ordinance. They are listed here. Staff has found that this proposed text amendment meets those review criteria as it supports the comprehensive plan by minimizing the impact of signs and ensuring high quality signage. It's required due to a U.S. Supreme Court decision. It addresses a community need to hold signage to high standards for aesthetics and reduce the visual clutter caused by unregulated signage. And it's consistent with the zoning districts in this ordinance by ensuring high quality and visually unobtrusive signage. It will result in a more attractive street corridors and properties and will have no impact on the natural environment. Again, before you, the Planning Commission is a recommending body to council, and you have 3 options when considering this particular text amendment item. Do you have any questions?
Any questions of Missy on this presentation, this proposal, Commissioner Whaley?
Missy, when a commercial, largely commercial lot might have a monument sign, with multiple individual commercial signs, how do they fall within these regs? Does the monument have to have each individual sign a certain size, or does a monument get permitted as a single allowance? How does that work?
I'm going to have technical questions related to the administration of the sign. If Trey Lau could come and assist with answering some of those questions, but in large part, yes, monument signs have limitations to their area, the aesthetic qualities of them, the materials, but I will defer to.
So those are covered under a different text amendment, or?
Could you re-ask your question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely, Trey. What I was asking was, when you have, largely in a commercial setting, when you have a monument sign with like multiple signs on it, how are they affected by this? Are they covered by a different text amendment or reg?
So with the monument signs, those are still in the code, and not much has changed on those. Basically, with what this is doing is we're getting back in line to make sure that we're being content neutral on that. So as far as size, location, things like that, the standard that we're used to, we're still able to administer that. It's just content, because of some case law, we can't dictate what goes on someone's sign.
Okay, thank you.
When I think what she might be referring to are sign systems, and there's no changes that are proposed to sign system text. And that is an integrative sign system that's required for all planned unit developments, commercial developments, office complexes, and shopping centers. And for reference, it is on page 67 of 116 of this packet, or page 24 of 32. And there are no changes to that text within this text amendment.
She also. Well, a sign system would be their facade sign, incidental signs, monument sign, as you call it. There's actually freestanding signs is the section of the code, which is on page 57 of 116 or 14 of 32. Those are those signs that they fall in. So the signs you're referring to are, typically there's a larger anchor tenant that's got there, or the name of the development, Circle Center, for example, and there's tenant panels on there. Each tenant panel is treated differently, so they're permitted individually. So as far as effect to them, again, they would still have to meet whatever the monument sign was. The same material would have to be used for each tenant panel, same colors, you know, it's just the content that would be regulated on those.
And again, there were no changes proposed to freestanding signs. This amendment does not affect how we regulate those signs.
Commissioner Loba.
Okay, I have a very specific question, and I want to let the audience know that I own a sign company, so I want to be fully transparent that's why this question is very specific. For the content neutral, I'm assuming that includes text. I'm assuming that includes any related graphics. I'm assuming that includes any descriptive words. And what I'd like, and if I'm wrong about that, just say so. But I'd like to also know if it includes colors. And specifically, the reason I asked that question is because one of the challenges we have as a sign company is that companies have spent a lot of money on branding and branding their logo. And companies have specific colors for their logos. And in the past, they haven't always been able to use those specific colors in their logo, which has caused great pain on some of these folks. So my question is, does content neutral include text, graphics, descriptive words, and colors? And I know that's a hard question to answer.
Colors, no, it does not. So we'll still be able to regulate the colors. We try to be more lenient as far as we understand that there are brands out there that try to represent. However, if you do read portions of our text in the code and in the design guide, it does state that you may be required to change your color to meet island character, and we'll still maintain that island character. In the back on pages 30, oops, we got definitions, sorry. So in on 28 of 32 or 71 of 116, there are still sections that do relate to, let's see, some of the prohibitions in the code. I think we took out everything. I want to say we left, let me see. So no, we took out everything that would have made, so previously in this section, where is it at? Oh, no, we left that in there. So number 13, signs that exhibit statements, words, or pictures of an obscene or pornographic nature. So we would definitely regulate that. But otherwise, text, logo, all of that, whatever message somebody's trying to convey, we could not regulate that content as we have in the past.
And I'm only going to add it just as a comment that I would suggest that the overall sign colors obviously should be regulated and things for the overall sign, the background, the borders and all of those types of things. But I would tread lightly on the colors, the branded colors of company logos, because that is content. So that's just my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Commissioner Hens?
So the reason for this priority amendment request today is just so that we change our ordinance to reflect the new law? Is that the only reason why we're here?
That's correct, to be compliant with content neutrality in our sign regulations. I will reiterate again, as we dove into our existing sign code, it could use a lot of attention. So,
But this is just to
That's correct.
become compliant, so.
that is what this is. There's no question that the sign code needs extra attention.
Other questions of Missy? Okay, then Hannah, did we have anybody sign up on the town portal to speak with us on this topic?
Not on this topic.
Okay. Let me see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak with us on this particular topic. Seeing nobody, we will close the public hearing and move back to us here we have three choices: recommend approval to town council, recommend denial, or recommend approval with conditions. Commissioner Hens?
Recommend approval as presented to town council.
Okay, is there a second? Commissioner Lobos seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, then raise your right hand. Okay, we have another unanimous. Thank you. We next move on to a land management ordinance amendment that deals with setback standards and rules of measurement. I will open the public hearing on that particular topic and invite Missy to go for round three here.
All right. Okay, let's go 3 for 3. Right now, this amendment is, it's an amendment for regulations on how we measure height, setback encroachments for both residential and non-residential development. Staff is recommending approval of this text amendment. Again, all part of our growth management strategy as a priority of town council within their strategic action plan. And in that September workshop, with council, we discussed amendments related to height and setback encroachments. And we talked about them as potentially back at that time as two separate amendments. They are combined as one amendment today. We talked about the residential mass and scale and these particular topics at that September workshop, that changes needed to apply to existing subdivisions where possible and current building heights are too high. There needs to be more light, air, and separation between units, need to increase setbacks, and establish minimum lot sizes. That will be addressed in the full code update. Non-residential was similar, that building heights are too high, needs to be more air, light, and separation between units, increase setbacks, establish minimum lot sizes, and there should be a relationship between height and proximity of the street and boundaries. Lower, closer to the street and boundaries of the property, for example, was what was discussed. Mass and scale has been a topic of discussion and concern for both residential and non-residential on the island for some time. We see new buildings or new structures that are often larger and out of character, or out of scale with the surrounding existing development. And this amendment is proposed to modify how height is measured and reduce allowable setback encroachments. Current regulations require that building heights be measured relative to flood zone elevations, which increases the allowable height of the building from ground level. So if you're measuring from 0 and it's not on the ground, then effectively, yes, that mass or that height of that structure appears to be greater than the height limit of the district. The changes that are proposed will provide a more accurate representation of the building scale relative to the surrounding landscape by adjusting how we measure height. And the current regulations also allow encroachments into our allowable setback areas. And this amendment will provide more separation between buildings. And both of these changes will reduce the overall mass and scale of development in both residential and non-residential building types. So there are changes both to setback angle, height, and encroachments that are detailed in the memo, and then also further summarized in the amendment table that's in the staff report. I'll go through these in detail because I want to make sure that it's understood what these changes are as it relates to setback angle, how height is measured, and the changes to the encroachment table. So one of the primary changes is to change the elevation above the ground at which how we measure that setback angle. So basically at a certain height, at 20 feet now, there's an angle that, and the angle changes based on your zoning or your, what use is adjacent. But it's a percent, an angle is a percentage. And so it requires basically that a building be stepped back at a certain height. And there is a graphic here that illustrates what our current code allows and what the proposed amendment allows. So currently, our current ordinance, we require a setback angle to begin at 20 feet over an elevation of 13 above mean sea level or pre-development grade, whichever is higher. And that's for residential structures. And for non-residential structures, instead of 13, we measure from 11 feet above mean sea level or pre-development grade. And so the lower at the point at which that angle begins, which is the red line here, the more restricted it is if measured from the higher point, which is the blue line. So this is an example of a structure that has pre-development grade that's less than 13 feet. So this is a residential example. Again, it's not to scale, but here in the blue line where we would measure from 13 feet to get to where that 20-foot marker is, and then the setback angle takes place here. If we were to measure from pre-development grade, which is what is proposed, we would start measuring from grade, and then we would get to that 20-foot, and then that same setback angle would apply. So you can see how that might change what that built structure looks like, because the portion here would not be able to be built with this particular amendment. So again, that blue line shows the existing LMO allowance, and the red line shows the more restricted horizontal building envelope that does limit the mass and scale of new buildings. So allowable encroachments, and I'll go to that section in the code amendment as well, but there are a limited number of setback and height encroachments that are allowable within our setback encroachment table. While the closest point of the building is subject to the minimum setback lines from the property line and or the setback angle, certain architectural elements can extend into the setback with some limitations. So if a sidewall of a house is built up to the setback line, a bay window may extend up to 2 feet into a setback if it's not more than 9 feet wide. That's what the current code allows. We also have several allowable encroachments such as open balconies, uncovered decks, porches that are proposed to be struck from that allowable encroachments table to reduce allowable encroachments. Items like eaves, bay windows, and awnings are proposed to be retained in the table with a reduced extent. And other architectural elements and appurtenances are proposed to be removed so they may no longer encroach into the maximum height or setback angle or setback. There's also a footnote you'll note in the table. A further restriction is included to prevent all allowable encroachments from being closer than 5 feet from a property line. So that means that no encroachment can be within the property line and 5 feet. So there is a likelihood of creating nonconformities for those architectural elements. This figure here shows how an eave may extend into a setback area still by 2 feet, while an unenclosed porch can no longer extend into a minimum setback area. In the current code, an unenclosed porch can extend up to 5 feet into a setback. And so the current amendment does not allow that. So we also have a change that's proposed that changes how height is measured. It doesn't change building heights, it just changes how we measure height. It's proposed to be measured from pre-development grade in all cases, rather than the higher elevation of pre-development grade or 13 feet or 11 feet above mean sea level, depending on whether that's 13 is residential and 11 is non-residential. So this means that if the building site is lower than 11 or 13, depending on the building type, the measurement from pre-development grade, the red line on the next page, will be greater than measuring from 13 feet or 11 feet above mean sea level. So here is the difference on this particular example. Right now, we're measuring, this is a residential example, from that 13 elevation as 0, and you get to your maximum building height, and from pre-development grade, the line should have been shorter, you would get to a building height of right here. So we also pulled an actual submitted plan to show what this could look like, both from the setback angle and from how you measure building height. And the blue line is the existing land management ordinance requirements. Again, this example, 13 above mean sea level, that line is right here. Pre-development grade is down here. So the blue line, we're getting up to this point right here before we start with that setback angle. Here, we would get to about this point where you can see a little bit of the top part of the roof structure is within that setback angle plane. And this shows here, this is that difference in height as well. So the staff report includes some maps that show both residential and non-residential properties that could most likely be affected by the proposed change. This figure shows, let's see if I can get it all on one page. This figure shows the residential properties that are 13 feet above mean sea level. And so there are 18,015 residential properties. There are 11,394 of those that are below 13 mean sea level. And so we don't know what the height of all of those structures are, or the built structures in these areas, but we do know that there's a possibility that they could be affected by this particular change in how height is measured. We have a similar map for non-residential properties. The total number of non-residential properties that are above 11 feet mean sea level is 895. And so 380 of those are below 11 feet mean sea level, and they're red on this particular map. And then there's a table that outlines what I have just discussed. Again, the change to how height is measured in both the overlays, changing that graphic for how setback angle is measured here to show that it's measured from grade. And here's how that same thing in the setback table, adjacent use setback requirements. Again, it's that change where we're just going to measure from pre-development grade and not 11 or 13. Those similar tables are also there. So there's a new table or graphic that's created. And then this is where the allowable setback encroachment table changes can be observed. And so there currently are allowable encroachments for all of the items that are in the first column, and then the extent of those encroachment allowances are identified in the next column on the right. You can see what is proposed to be struck: open balconies, fire escapes, or exterior stairways. There is one category that is proposed to be added as a result of a conversation with our building official, that there in some cases are required means of egress in which we need to have an allowable setback encroachment for up to 42 inches into a setback. And that does not mean that somebody wants to add a rear exit and stairway off of a master bedroom, for example. That's not a required means of egress. There are some structures that have a certain number or quantity of required means of egress. Many mobile homes require both a front and a rear required means of egress, and we want to make sure that our code allows for those circumstances. You'll notice that there's a footnote, and that refers to that footnote that I mentioned, where there are no allowable encroachments within 5 feet of any property line. And then the extent of some of the allowable encroachments is being lessened. So it's being lessened for chimneys and fireplaces. Instead of 3 feet, it's 2 feet. Roof eaves and overhangs, awnings are being reduced from 3 feet to 2 feet and 5 feet to 2 feet, respectively. And again, bay windows are being reduced the extent from 3 feet to 2 feet. Again, another, several other items of current encroachments are proposed to be struck altogether. Uncovered porches, stoops, decks, patios, terraces, light fixtures, spires, cupolas, domes, skylights, solar collection devices, small wind energy systems, amateur radios, other architectural features. And then again, here's where you can see the verbiage for that footnote that was added that limits any allowable encroachment no closer than 5 feet from any setback. Here you can see how the calculation of height or definition of height is being adjusted. And again, it's striking all of this language and just leaving in that it is measured from pre-development grade here. And so all of these other components are being struck. So these changes to both building height and allowable setback encroachments may result in the creation of non-conforming structures. Those are structures that do not comply with the current dimensional standards that would be proposed in this new text amendment. Those structures are allowed or permitted to exist and to be maintained. They are impacted if they were to be expanded, relocated, altered, or damaged. So again, those structures, if they were to become non-conforming with this new code, would become legal non-conforming structures. The code has several ways in which we handle the standards for nonconformities. And nonconformities are common among many zoning codes across the country. So anytime we do make changes, there's a likelihood that legal nonconformities would be created. So we have a chapter 16.7 within our code, which is how our current code handles nonconformities. And I wanted to highlight that this particular paragraph here, the town does recognize the continued existence of nonconformities, and it's generally inconsistent with the purpose and extent of the ordinance. It also recognized this ordinance needs to provide flexibility to encourage redevelopment of nonconforming development if it lessens the degree of nonconformity and if redevelopment is consistent with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the district in which the development is located. There also are provisions for the regulation of nonconforming uses, structures, signs, site features, and specifies those circumstances and conditions under which nonconformities are allowed and continue to redevelop. There are a number of ways that legal nonconforming structures can be handled, and so there are cases where it can be handled through our disaster recovery chapter, and there are statements of how that could be handled. It has to still meet Title 15 of the municipal code, which refers to our building code requirements. If a dwelling is legally established non-conforming structure, then the building restoration or repair shall comply with the development standards of the current code to the extent deemed reasonably practical by the official. For other structures, the degree of damage is considered in 2 different scenarios, and those are outlined here. A building permit can be issued to restore, rebuild, or repair a legal nonconforming structure within 18 months of damage of not more than 50% of its appraised fair market value immediately prior to the damage. And then the legal nonconforming structure damaged or destroyed to the extent of 50% or more prior to the damage shall not be repaired except in accordance with the requirements of this ordinance. In the case of redevelopment, we have a substitution of nonconformities for redevelopment section that does allow for more flexibility with nonconformities. And the substitution for nonconformities requires that that redevelopment meets these criteria here. It cannot include new development that increases the amount of encroachment into a required buffer or setback, cannot increase the impervious cover on the site over the maximum allowed, would not result in a density in excess of what's allowed under the ordinance, will lessen the extent of existing non-conforming site features to the greatest extent possible, and will not have an adverse effect on health, safety, or welfare, and also will lessen the extent of nonconformities for any existing nonconforming structure. So site features and structure in items 4 and 6. The footprint of any existing non-conforming site feature or structure can be maintained or expanded as long as the applicant receives approval meeting the criteria above and does not, and none of the following of these cases are involved. So that it's a non-conforming sign, expansion or enlargement associated with a non-conforming use, or replacement of a non-conforming site feature with a non-conforming structure, and/or the demolition or modification of an existing non-conforming structure with the intent to rebuild or remodel in accordance with an approved zoning map amendment or the redevelopment overlay district section. So, I know that was a lot, but as you're well aware, there are review standards, and staff reviewed this amendment and has evaluated it, and it meets the text amendment review criteria. It supports the comprehensive plan by ensuring that new and redeveloped housing maintains and enhances the character of the island. It's required due to concerns with the scale of buildings and impacts on adjacent properties and residents. It addresses a demonstrated community need to control the overall mass, scale, and height of new buildings. It ensures that development meets the intent of the town zoning districts, results in a logical and orderly development at the proper scale, and are compatible with nearby buildings and structures, and reduces the overall impact of townwide development, minimizing adverse effects on the environment and natural resources. Again, the Planning Commission has 3 options when reviewing this text amendment. Are there any questions that you may have?
Any questions of Missy on this particular item? Commissioner,
Hi, Missy. So specifically for residential non-conforming, legally non-conforming buildings in a disaster, I'm trying to simplify it and tell me if what I'm saying is correct. If the officials deem that less than 50% of the value or structure of the building remains, then they have to rebuild to the new setbacks. If more remains than 50%, they can go back to their non-conforming status. Is that correct? Is that a correct interpretation?
Did you say that? Like, I can't tell if you stated that in the inverse or
Yeah,
not.
okay. For disaster specifically, for loss of property, for a non-conforming, legally non-conforming residential development, a home on the water.
Yeah, I believe.
If 50% of the property, whoever deems it, is lost, then they have to rebuild to this statute and setback, correct?
I believe that's correct. Mr. Coltrane, is that true?
But we also have, though, a disaster recovery
Yes,
ordinance
we do.
that addresses that, and honestly, sitting here off the top of my head, I can't answer your question, but in the case of a declared natural disaster such as you described, there's another ordinance that also comes into play with regard to that.
We can provide additional information back to the Planning Commission on that particular topic, and certainly can include that in more detail in the staff memo should this move on past the Planning Commission today.
other questions of Missy? Commissioner Whaley?
Missy, in the development and sign standards section, where the original text exists, 16.5-102, I just want to make sure I understand the scope of this. It states, unless expressly exempted or modified in this subsection, or for those 3 districts, Coligny, Stony, and light industrial, these setback requirements will apply. So does that mean Coligny, Stony, and light industrial have different section that applied to setbacks than everyone else? Of course, I see the overlay districts are spiked out as well.
What page are you on, excuse me?
I think it's on, I have it at the bottom is page 3 of 11 in this, in the actual Exhibit A, Mass and Scale Amendments, Attachment 2.
Mm-hmm.
Go to page 3. More pages. Oh, yeah, no, that's it. If you go scroll to the top of that page,
Okay,
first sentence under C.
okay.
I want to make sure that we understand what's covered by this setback. So the way I read it, again, is that Coligny, Stony, and industrial light districts will not have these setback requirements applied to them. So that's part A of the question. And if that is true, is there another section, which I couldn't find when I was kind of moseying through the LMO, that apply to them separately? So I guess they have their own setbacks that are not covered by these changes.
I'm aware for sure that the Clugny Resort District does have some district-specific regulations. If Trey or Shay could look at that particular section and verify if that and Stony and the Light Industrial District has that. This is not proposed to be changed, though. This is existing text within the code. It's not subject to any changes that are part of this proposed text amendment. And this is only for the adjacent street setback component here. But on the, the regular setback table is not part of this amendment set because there are no strikeouts that are proposed there. But I can assure you that structures do have setbacks from adjacent uses in these districts as well. But if you'd allow us to look up those particular sections.
If you can just point me to what the section is, I can always do that at some other time. I don't have to take up everybody's time with that.
Sure.
The other question I had was, we had a discussion earlier, one of the commissioners brought up, are we creating a street or an easement where we put a name in? So these setbacks are focused on adjacent street setback requirements. So if you have a back lot that is technically on a street, do these setbacks apply to the development of that back lot that's just on an easement address?
Yes, and you can see now that.
Gee, I thought I turned that off, I'm sorry.
So there are three classifications for adjacent street setbacks: from a major arterial, a minor arterial, and other streets. And then it's either measured from the street right-of-way or easement line to the closest portion of a structure. And so it would apply if that particular easement is considered an other street in this other street category, yes.
So for like the example we had earlier, where we just named.
There
the
is a
street.
setback from an easement. An easement would be considered an other street.
Okay.
And typically for single-family use, then there would be a 20-foot setback from that
Thank you.
easement.
Other questions of Missy from the commission? Commissioner Hens?
Yeah, this is kind of a philosophical question. I understand non-conforming, I get it. You change the ordinance and so things are now not necessarily conforming. But what I understand is with allowable setbacks, with required setbacks, why would you have allowable setback encroachments? Why are there so many allowed encroachments if you would think that if there's a setback, there's a setback? I don't understand why seems like there's a lot of allowable encroachments, and why would that be?
Yeah, there are various codes that some of them have allowable setback encroachments. In some cases, it's intentional. Maybe communities want to see more front porches, for example, and then they have a more gracious allowance for a front setback encroachment specific to a porch. It may be that that's important for that community's character, for home types within a certain district. And sometimes, some of our setbacks, if you look at them, they're 20 feet, they're 30 feet. In some cases, setbacks from our major arterials were 50 feet. So your building, your sidewall of your building can encroach, but these allowable encroachment features can. Or it's proposed that many of these features are going to be struck, or the extent of them is being reduced to make sure that we have better separation among our built environment and the adjacent development or adjacent property. But it is fairly common to have allowable encroachments in a code. I think what we were lacking and where some of these encroachments have been, I think the scale of them has been tested a little bit, is where we have very minimal setbacks. So if you're in a residential neighborhood and your setback is 5 feet, that means that the structure is only 5 feet away from the property line, and we could allow an open balcony come straight to the property line because it can extend 5 feet. And so I think where these allowable encroachments are more exacerbated are where we have lower setbacks that have been approved as such. So there are a number of areas that do have minimal setbacks. And I think that's mainly what this will address, but it also will address that your developable area is more or less defined by the allowable setbacks.
Other questions of Missy? Mr. Coltrane?
Yes, in response to the commissioner's question about damage in a disaster, Ms. Mueller allowed me to use her laptop. So under Chapter 9 of the Land Management Ordinance, there is a disaster recovery process that has an emergency permitting process in it. And structures, residential structures that are damaged or destroyed can be built back the way they were.
Even if it's non-conforming?
Yes,
Oh, good, that's great.
in that circumstance where there's been a natural disaster and as a result, the structure's damaged or destroyed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah, did we have anybody request to speak to us on this topic?
Yes, we have two. Mr. Chindress,
Okay. Is Mr. Chindress with us?
Mr. Braden.
Mr. Braden? Good afternoon. Please remember that your comments need to be limited to 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
I sent comments, so you can read mostly what I wanted to say. So I'm in the Bradley Beach area, and I think the reason that FAR was previously rejected, the FAR regulations, no offense to Missy, but, or Mrs. Lewick, and the reason that Sean Cullen had to apologize to the council was because it was island-wide and it failed to consider what would happen to very small lots. Like on Bradley Beach Road, where lots are only 60 by 80 feet, they're very, very small, and it's about 85 to 90% built out already. And that would have meant that the few remaining lots would only be allowed to build practically a tiny house. And so it didn't go anywhere. And I think this is pretty much a very similar thing. They're just trying to limit the mass and scale, obviously, but it doesn't show what it would do to specific small lots, like Bradley Beach Road or Bradley Circle, where it's RM8. And it's very important that we know exactly what can be built. I mean, if you can't build a house as big as your neighbor or only half as big, it really matters. And so I think it should be carefully looked at before it goes up to council this time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you.
Was there anybody else, Hannah? Okay, let me ask of those remaining in the audience, anyone else like to speak with us on that particular topic? Seeing none, we will, I'm sorry? Yes, sir. Is there somebody? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward. If you could give us your name for the record and know that you're limited to 3 minutes, please.
Linda Harrington, Indigo Run. My question is, and I'm not familiar because I haven't gone through the whole code. The lots that are appropriate for this, what is their minimum lot size? Anybody? You don't have a set minimum lot size? Is that possible?
This is not a question to answer.
Excuse me?
You need to address the question.
Well, I'm looking at the attorney because he would probably have the answer, but that's my question. Because 5 feet setback is very small. So I am just picturing in my mind, say Stony. They sell that property, you're gonna have bing, 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 bang, all the way up 278. That isn't a good look to welcome people to the island. So the FAR was really a good solution. So again, when someone figures out what a minimal buildable lot is here on the island, that'd be real helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing on that and bring it back to commission for discussion. We have three options: to recommend approval, to recommend denial, or to recommend approval with conditions. Is anybody willing to move one of those? Commissioner Dubois?
I'd move to recommend approval.
We have a motion to recommend approvals supported by Commissioner Loba. Questions, comments by the commission? Okay, all in favor of that motion, please raise your right hand. Looks like we're unanimous again. Okay, thank you. We have moved the public comment to non-agenda items to after staff reports number 10, so that will hold on for a minute. I have a couple of things. There's nothing under commission business, but under chairman's report, I have a couple of things to talk about. First of all, June 30th is the end of our fiscal year, and so things start all over again, as you know, which means for those of you who still have continuing education requirements, you have until June 30 to do it. So if you've heard from me in the last several days on that topic, you know who you are. If you haven't heard from me, you're golden. But let's be sure that we're all in compliance by June 30th with that. Secondly, the last agenda item on our June meeting will be election of officers for the new coming year. And I'd like to announce that it's my preference to not be a candidate, to continue in this role for that reason. And it's not because I don't enjoy the job, it's because I feel like someone else needs to have that opportunity. So we will participate, as we have in the past couple of years, in what's called the open nominations process, or sometimes called nominations from the floor. So any commissioner can nominate any other commissioner. Our rules of procedure state that only people who have had 1 year or more of experience on the commission are eligible to run, which means nobody who's coming on the commission July 1st would qualify. We have Vice Chair Campbell, who's retiring next month after two terms on the commission. And so we want to be sure to thank him next month too, but everybody else would be eligible to be nominated or to nominate somebody else. So I will send all of this to you in an email, but the responsibilities of those two sections are outlined in the rules of procedure in sections 2A and 2B, and there's additional information about the role of the chair in Article 9, so I would recommend that to all of you. Lastly, this will be Missy Lewick's last meeting with us. She's still on town staff until the day before our next planning commission, but I wanted to publicly thank Missy for helping those of us who are not trained professional planners understand the issues that are before us and help us and be patient with us as we try to grasp an understanding of those things. We wish you the very best in all your future endeavors, Missy, and thank you so much. Okay, now we are ready for the staff report. Trey, are you going to be doing that for today? This would be on the issue of the reverse osmosis water treatment plant proposed by the South Island Public Service District. We will have a report, this report by Trey Lau, and then I will open it up to public comment, and we'll go from there. Okay, Trey?
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Nice stuff. Bear with me for a second. I don't have everything pulled up yet.
While he's finding his place, let me announce, if you hadn't seen the memo that came from Trey with the agenda packet, this information is being provided to the commission for information only. We will be taking no action or making any recommendations out of today's. We'll still want to hear anybody's comment on it, but we will not be taking any action on what we hear on this particular project today. We ready, Trey?
I am almost. Just gonna get everything pulled up for us. And then. All right. So as you know, we are continuously looking for ways to improve. One is bringing all the major development plans and major subdivisions to the Planning Commission. Hopefully that will be codified soon. Today we have one for you, DPR 001029-2024, and that's located at 131 Dunnigan's Alley. And it is a development project that proposes a reverse osmosis water treatment plant that will include the structures, infrastructures required to pump and refine water, driveways, parking, and stormwater facilities for the site. All right? We'll start out with the site plan, or actually, I wanted to start out with the location. Are you all familiar with this site location? It's right down the road to my right. Here we are at Town Hall, and 131 is right off of Dunnigan's Alley down here to your right. All right. So here's our site plan and what is being proposed. Where's my... Oh boy. Are you able to see that up there? All right. So in the middle here, we have the reverse osmosis facility. This is where the main part of the plant will be housed. To the exterior and towards Dunnigan's Alley, you have a flush tank down here, some sand separators, heat exchangers, cooling facilities, and high service pump station, all which are required to run a reverse osmosis plant and refine the water the way we need it. This water will serve South Island Public Service District, so anybody that lives on the south end of the island, this water will be for them. All right? All this driveway infrastructure here is just to service the plant. It's not a public right-of-way or anything like that. I believe, from what I understand, 4 to 5 folks per day may visit the site to run it. This is our landscaping plan that we will have as they finish the facility. They are required to plant some back. As you probably noticed as you drive up and down Dunnigan's Alley, you used to could not see back there, but in order to get some of this construction done, they've had to take out some of the native vegetation that was there, and we've had to have a pretty robust planting schedule back and what already exists there as well. This is just what they're planting back right here if you're interested to know what kind of vegetation or trees they'll put back. And these are a couple of elevations of the plant itself. Again, their narrative states exactly what I told you. This project consists of a reverse osmosis water treatment plant used to refine and produce water. And that is all I have. And I will open it up to questions from you all.
Let's first take questions from the commission. Any questions of Trey and his presentation, Commissioner Hens?
So Trey, this is what's being built there now. This isn't proposed. This is in process.
So this project was done in 2 phases. The first phase was a minor DPR phase, which consisted of a Cretaceous well, and back here in this corner back here is a reclaimed water tank that provides water for the Wexford Golf Course.
So that was phase 1 that's in process.
That's what you see right now is the well that's being drilled that will service this facility once it's built.
And phase 2 is that building and everything else. That
Correct.
you just saw, okay.
Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Whaley?
I know nothing about this technology. Can you just sort of describe visually, are these all enclosed, all these reverse osmosis tanks, and there's a clear well and a flush tank? Are these all in like closed structures or?
So we've got the engineer and South Island PSD here with us today. They're probably better to answer that. I can answer that everything inside of this building structure here is enclosed. From what we've read in the narrative and some studies that have gone along with it, some of these other facilities will have structures or some sort of enclosure over them. So, but I will let them speak to that if you would like them to
That'd be
answer.
great, thank you.
Maybe you could better answer that, or John, whichever.
All these structures are enclosed except for the cooling facilities, which is on the front on the side of Dunnigan's.
Sir, could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Say that again?
Could you identify yourself for the record?
I'm John Peak with South
Thank you.
Island.
Thank you. Commissioner Whaley, does that answer your question? Other questions, anybody here? Okay, I think we're good. Let's find out, do we have any signups from the portal, Hannah, on this particular topic?
We do. We have 6 people that would like to speak. This is a reminder that even when the chair asks if people would like to speak, we do need a form filled out. There is apparently a particular order in which they would like to speak. Okay. So whoever is speaking first, if you'll stand up.
Good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Shelton. I go by Ben. I'm an attorney with Shelton Law Firm, and I represent Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort. I'm also speaking as a property owner within the Wexford, on a personal level, in the village of Wexford. First of all, thank you all for your service. That doesn't get said enough. This is a Tuesday afternoon. I know you all have businesses or other things you can do, so I have a business myself. Thank you. First of all, on behalf of Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort, this is an industrial water treatment plant, and it's being built in an area surrounded by property which is designated for use as primary, which is being used for primary vacation residential use, okay? As you heard Mr. Lau just state, the initial approval of this was a minor development. However, there's litigation going on this, no bones about that. It has resulted in extreme noise disturbances, quality of life disturbances, health disturbances, and also there's also generators that are constantly run or often run in different stages that also put out fumes that are health concerns. While you know that Wexford is a residential community, so is Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort. All owners within these, there's 401 property owners in that community, are for residential use. They deserve to be able to enjoy their residential property as much as any other property owner and Hilton Head Island citizens. Please review the studies carefully that have been presented. We presented also a study, an acoustic study of our own that shows that as built, our study shows that this cooling center and the generators particularly would exceed Hilton Head Island noise ordinances. I understand you're not passing any recommendation. I don't really necessarily agree with that, but I'm just stating that that's the course that has been set for this. But this is the only forum that, if anyone's here from Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort, will you please stand? Thank you, please be seated. This is the only forum that these folks have been provided where they each had they had individual notice of. So that's why it's so important for them to be here, understanding that this commission does not necessarily have a vote in the matter at this stage. We pray that if you ever do have a vote in the matter, that you would consider these residents and citizens. Many of them vote here, pay property tax, all of them pay property taxes here. Many of them vote here on Hilton Head Island, are placed in consideration. Now, on a personal level, I'd just like to state that I own Suite E6 of the village of Wexford. It's 1000 William Hilton Parkway. You can almost you can hit a golf ball there almost if you're a good golfer. And I can hear boring within my office that actually hums my walls. At times I'm wondering, is my HVAC system acting up? Is there something going on? We don't know exactly how long that's going to be going on. It may be temporary. I certainly hope it is. But the long-term consequences of there's a generator is going to be operating there for some time. The generator fumes, the diesel fumes come into the back of my office. You can smell it into the back door of my office from time to time. That's the concern I have with this development. Now, Hilton Head needs water. We understand that. We need to come up with creative ways. But at the very least, if this plan ever comes to fruition, which it appears it is, that we pray that the town would require the developers of this, which is the public service district, to have close proximity barriers. Not just, some of these enclosures are not going to enclose the acoustic treatments enough. Close proximity barriers around all of the acoustic features of this property so that all adjacent property owners are not impacted. Thank you so much. I probably outran my time, but I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. I understand there are 5 other people who would like to speak with us. Whoever's next, please. Once again, we need your name for the record, sir.
Thank you all. My name's Owen Bryant. I am a resident of Hilton Head Island Motor Coach Resort, and I live at 133 Arrow Road, Site 281. I'm here to represent the 401 tax-paying members of our resort who want to continue to enjoy a level of peace and quiet within our nature preserve. We're asking the town government to not allow SIPSIT to build a plant without adequate protection from noise and security lighting spillover onto the adjacent residential neighborhoods. Your own design review board has replied to the application that a sound absorbing wall should be installed. The South Island Public Service District has produced a sound model that is inadequate as justification that a well is not needed. We're offering proof today that this is not the truth. Please review and understand the modeling that we're providing. Your citizens, constituents, and taxpayers are dependent on you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Whoever is next, please.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Kangas, and I live at 133 Arrow Road, Lot 285. I'm here today to comment on the proposed Phase 2 design for the reverse osmosis plant. I live adjacent to the project, as do many of the people behind me today. We've had to suffer through Phase 1 construction and drilling for almost 3 years. It's been miserable. The noise and vibration has affected our health and our properties. The noise became so bad that we spent $35,000 to do our own independent sound study. The results of that study from our engineers, Arpeggio, revealed that the town and SIPSID study from Wave Engineering was inaccurate and unreliable. I'm here today to request that you review in detail both sound studies that are being submitted to you for Phase 2. We believe the results of our study indicate an absolute need for sound mitigation walls around all the equipment and buildings, and should be made part of Phase 2 design and permit requirements. We completely understand the need for clean water for everyone, residents, visitors, guests, and businesses alike. We all expect fresh water to magically come out of the faucet every time we turn a knob or a handle. It has to come from somewhere. We understand that. We're here today to ask that you treat us with the same respect and consideration going forward as you would expect for your homes, your families, your neighbors, and your neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Bud Grindle. I also live at 133 Arrow Road, Site 282. I'm here to add information to the planning board's meeting. This project, the SIPSID project that we're all talking about, contains a history of broken promises. The town agreed with the South Island Public Service District to allow construction based on a faulty study from Wave Engineering. We were promised that we would not be disturbed. We were. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months. That was painful. We were told that the town would keep us updated on the construction progress. We were not. This project has stretched on for 2.5 years now. When is it going to end? We have asked the Code Enforcement Office to cite the other noisy neighbors that we have, such as the car wash, such as the new bar, tavern, whatever it is. They have not stopped the noise. How will they stop it after this plant is built? You're not gonna shut it down. You can fine them all you want, but it's not gonna help. So we need the noise mitigated before the plant is built. Carefully review the study we are submitting. It clearly shows the information from Wave Engineering and SIPSID is inaccurate. They have done a poor job predicting what the sound is going to be. Our study proves that and provides a remedy that will bring this project into compliance with the town noise codes. That's the least you should expect. This plant is surrounded by residents. Protect our peace and quiet. We want to come here. We want to enjoy the island, but we don't want to sit next to an industrial plant rattling our windows all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there two more people I think to hear from? Any?
Mr. Dixon?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name's Sean Dixon, 133 Arrow Road, lot 233. I hadn't done this since college. Me and my wife have experienced extreme nausea from the generator that is being run every day that it does run. The drilling is noise, whether it being causing the vibrations in the ground, I don't know. But I believe personally that it is the diesel generator that is rumbling the ground 24/7 when it's in operation. I personally, last week, was working, because I work in the resort on RVs. I was working on Owen's coach. He's the closest one to the drill right now. I almost threw up, and I'm standing on bare ground. The sound did not make me want to throw up. I'm used to sound. I used to work on old cars, grinding and beating and hammering. It's the vibration in the ground. Now, y'all say, well, he's crazy. Well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been around a boombox car sitting at a red light and it vibrating your car and you can't wait to get away from it? Well, that's what it is, 24/7, every time the diesel engine is pouring out horsepower. Now, we all have motor homes. We're all used to diesel engines. We drive them. We go places. They don't make us sick. What makes us sick is the vibration. And it's a health issue. It's not just a livable issue, it is a health issue. It is called a low frequency vibration. There are health studies done on it that affects your heart, that affects your eyes. When we leave the resort, it takes us 3 days to not feel like we are dizzy or nauseous. So when we travel, 3 days later, we feel better. When we come back, 3 days later, we're sick. That means a lot to me and my family. I ask you to, don't know what we can do to stop it, but I do know there's ramifications that can be done with the generator that will not cause the vibrations that we feel in our resort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other speakers? Okay, well, we will close the public.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay, didn't see you.
I was waiting for the sixth speaker. My name is Walter Nestor, and I'm an attorney with the Burr and Foreman Law Firm.
Yes, sir.
And we represent the South Island Public Service District, and appreciate your role, Mr. Chairman, what you've identified in the commissioners. As Mr. Shelton said, there is active litigation between the Motor Coach Resort and the Public Service District. And we also have experts, and we also have studies in engineering, and we're just going to leave it to the litigation. We don't feel that there's anything more to be said, but we do appreciate your role here today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we will close the public hearing, and we're getting close to adjournment. Is there anything else that needs to come before the commission today? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned.